Thanks, Kieran. It's great to be here. As was mentioned earlier, I'm here representing the European Network for Workplace Health Promotion. We're based in Italy. You will probably have noticed I don't sound terribly Italian. We are a virtual organisation, personally, and it means that all of us are home workers. We don't have an office. We are a virtual organisation. There's relevance as well. My previous life, I was a national lead for workplace health in Scotland, 15 years as director of the Centre for Healthy Working Lives, and also worked with Scottish Government and led the development of their most recent health and work strategy, which was unfortunately published just before COVID, and I think has sat on a shelf for much of the time since. So anyway, it's a pleasure to be here. I know that there's a lot here to present, so I'm going to skip through the slides rather than necessarily going into detail on them. But we will, I think, circulate or make available all of the presentations so you can look in more detail at them sort of when you have an opportunity. So looking at the educational and training resources. First slide really just is an extract from the technical document which outlines what it is that we were asked to do. And it was to support employers, really raise awareness of the importance of promoting a culture of health within organizations and developing the skills and knowledge of promoters, the term that was adopted, the practitioners who will support active strategies within those workplaces. It's a simple plan, do, review type of process. So it's good practice. And the critical thing right the way through it is focusing on the needs of these users, of the promoters, to make sure that the outputs are suitable for them, for their employers, and indeed for the staff they work with. So there was a 4-stage development process, a needs assessment, a training design, delivery, and then evaluation. I could probably spend at least the duration of this presentation on each one. But what I'll do is just kind of highlight some of the main things from each of these. So in terms of the training needs assessment, we were asking 5 key questions. Who is likely to be a promoter? The general assumption, I think, was that it would most likely be professionals working in occupational safety and health and HR. That's great for big organizations. There's not a lot of smaller businesses have HR personnel, have an OHS advisor. They might contract something externally, some advice, but they don't have it. So we needed to think hard about that. What were the knowledge and skills a promoter requires? How will they implement and manage it in the workplace? What are the content areas? What are the guts of the information that people need? And also finally the duration, which was I think originally envisaged to be fairly significant. When we asked those questions, and we had 105 participants in the training needs assessment, a mix of face-to-face, written or online questionnaires and a Teams workshop, we came up with a number of conclusions which directly involved the training design. Originally, it was proposed it would be a massive open online course. That's exactly what we did. We actually implemented it through the Moodle LMS system that some of you will probably be familiar with. That meant it was self-directed. It was supported with forums, online support. But what we needed to do was make sure that it was flexible. It needed to meet the needs of more specialist staff who already knew quite a lot of this stuff, but would need detail in certain areas, particularly obviously around the program itself, around Click2Move, but which was also applicable to more generic staff, line managers also really in touch with the employees on more of a day-to-day basis. Modular was a big message that came through so that participants could actually dip in bite-sized chunks. They didn't necessarily have to sit, for an hour, 2 hours or whatever and work through an entire program. They could do sections at different times. Manageable length really came through loud and clear. Please no more than an hour for each of these sections. We've got jobs to do. So we came to a kind of happy medium, I think, of 1 hour per module roughly. So 4 hours in total. But then there was the additional opportunity for study over and above that, if anybody wanted to take a deeper dive. We needed to use a mix of learning styles, particularly since it was all online. So there's presentations, activities, personal group reflection, modeling, self-check, reinforcement using quizzes. So lots of different learning styles were used. And what was really great about the approach was from certainly a kind of management point of view and from a project point of view, we had a clear learning journey that could be tracked. So we could see where people were as a project, but individuals could see where they were as well within that process. So in terms of delivering it, we have 2 course aims, which was about the individuals, but also in terms of Click2Move, but also about the wider context. So that what we were doing would be applicable beyond the project, which when we start to think about scalability and also exploitation more generally is clearly important. There were 4 modules. There's a syllabus that we can make available as well that has all of the kind of detail in there. But the 4 modules, one was looking at the kind of more generic stuff around workplace health promotion. The second focused very much on Click2Move, so that the promoters had a detailed understanding of the project and how to implement and support it. The third was about how to set it up, and references being made to making sure that there's buy-in from an organization, from top management. That sort of stuff's included in there. And then the 4th module was, okay, Click2Move's, making an impact. Why not do more? There's other stuff you could be focusing on within your workplace, very specifically on mental health, perhaps. It could be around alcohol use, perhaps it could be on something else. So, taking that into a much bigger context and really leveraging the staff that we have available. In terms of module design, each was roughly speaking the same in terms of the structure, an aim, explicit aim for each module, an introduction. There was then learning content, so the topic related material. All of them had an activity break built into them, which focuses very much on modeling C2M as well. Each had a quiz, each had further reading. That's an extract from the module 1 on workplace health promotion, which I'm not expecting to be able to read in detail. A couple of screenshots, just so you can see them. This is on topic content. This one just happens to be workplace health promotion, but just to give a sense of the other content areas, we looked at what is home working, what are the occupational risks related to it. We looked at psychology and motivation, specifically a behavior change theory. So how do we assist people to make a change in their working practice? Looked at wider OH risks, lifestyle risks, risk assessment was in there, which we've talked about, and the other thing was monitoring evaluation. So a lot of granular detail when you drill into it. Activity breaks were there to familiarize promoters with the material on Click2Health. It meant that they were able to then model the practice, but it also had a very practical characteristic that it forced people who were undertaking the training to get up and be active. They had to actually test the thing themselves. So 3 outputs from that. That's an example from the quiz. So a self-check for the promoters, very much about reinforcing that learning as well, but also enabling us to assess that the learning was taking place. So we could feed that into the evaluation, which leads on to the evaluation. There were feedback tools built in, so you didn't have to leave the Moodle system to do this. There was feedback at module level, there was feedback at whole course level, and we had the quiz results. I've not a lot of time to go into detail, but just some of the feedback that we had, or I should say, in terms of where we talk about the assessment of characteristics, it's this kind of thing we're looking at, the relevance to individuals and to their place in work, the clarity of the materials, quality, and so on. So course evaluation, we had 60 participants in total, heavily in Spain, the Netherlands, and also Ireland. And this just gives a sense of who was involved. So a lot of OSH professionals, human resources, line managers, and quite a good number of external health promotion and OSH providers as well. So a good mix of folk who contributed. One slide just on the rating of the training impact, which, as you can see, is high. So around meeting expectations, matching needs, gaining that they gained relevant knowledge, that the information was appropriate to support them, and that they will use the information to support others to become more active at work. So positive evaluation on that. Something we weren't necessarily expecting, we put a question in, and that was looking at the motivation of the course participants, the users, to be more physically active at work. And it was great, actually, that the vast majority were, and quite highly motivated as well. So obviously a big advantage with that is that the promoters were, and the users were suggesting that they really bought in to the messages that they were looking at within the training. So, you know, in terms of their motivation to promote that and be real kind of living, breathing advocates for it was obviously very, very powerful. If they don't believe it, if they don't have that motivation, it's very difficult to impart and enthuse others. So that was a really good thing. We weren't necessarily expecting. There were a number of more kind of detailed recommendations on the evaluation. So there was something about improved course navigation, so people could dip out in and out a little bit more. Initially, the materials were available basically as PowerPoint presentations that needed to be downloaded to access them. That's now been dealt with. So materials are accessible in platform, so there's no need at all to come out of it. There was a bit of reorganization of content as well, with Click2Move, rather bizarrely in the second module, actually sitting about halfway through the material. So that's now at the top, which sort of makes sense. Module 4, we made explicitly optional, which reduced the kind of pressure on people. And unless you were involved perhaps in, you know, in wider health promotion work, or are going to be involved in a local evaluation piece around this within an organization, it made sense to do that. We gave very specific guidance to assist participants in identifying which content was most relevant to them. So for OSH staff, HR staff, just a simple little grid. These are the things that we would expect that you would probably know less about, rather than them having to work it out for themselves, which saved a bit of time for those personnel. And we agreed to leave the feedback tools in, which means that we can continue to have improvement process over time, rather than this being kind of the finish of things. So where are we and what's happening next? So we looked at the results as a consortium. We have now undertaken the redrafting, so everything's now where it should be. There's no more daft errors in it and things like that. We are pretty much finished the translation. So we originally trialed this in English only, rather than having 4 separate kind of threads, which would then obviously have to correct and make sure everything was consistent again. So it just made total sense. Not universally popular. There was a lot of feedback. Why can't we have this in our native languages? But it made more sense from an efficiency point of view. But that's now being addressed virtually there. Publication and rollout, some's already being loaded onto the system, the rest very, very shortly. Obviously, continuous improvement is something which was ongoing. And the last thing which is on there is exploitation. Yes, about scalability, as Judith's already referred, but for me, I've been around a bit. I've been involved in more projects than I care to remember over the years. And one of the really sad things for me is how so much great work gets done and then it gets neatly filed on a shelf somewhere, and that's it. And 10 years later, so virtually the same project comes around again. It's not good enough. We need to do more to make sure that the excellent work which has happened in this project is something which is is made available and can be leveraged for other purposes over time. So one commitment from ENWHP is that it will be up and running on the Moodle platform permanently as far as we is concerned, so that it will always be there and available for folk to use. And on that, so thank you.
There you go.